I think we're okay to get started because
All right.
we're able to hear and
it is 6:33. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. You are joining the East Goose Lake Neighborhood Conversation. Just a quick agenda and then we will do introductions and a welcome message. So the agenda for tonight is, first thing is to do welcomes. We'll include some information on the webinar housekeeping. We'll have staff introductions and then we'll have a welcome message from Councilmember Jones. We will then talk about an introduction to the East Goose Lake Adaptive Lake Management Approach. The most important part of the agenda is number 3, input and listening to you. And then the fourth one is next steps. So first off, want to ask Nick Voss, Vlamo's Coordinator of Education and Outreach, to give you a very brief introduction to webinar housekeeping related to the Zoom platform.
Great, thanks, Phil. Yep, my name is Nick, Education and Outreach Coordinator, and so with the mute options, I may hit mute all to reduce background noise throughout the meeting. This is not to limit anybody's voice, but it is recording, so we will preserve this recording and have it available later on. You'll see me typing in the chat bar as the presentation goes on, and I will type where we are in the chat bar in the presentation, and this just lets me organize the responses, and when things are typed in or when things are said, I'll be able to know in the reviewing after the fact where we are in the presentation and what ideas go where. So we'll have some time to engage in more in-depth discussion, and I'm going to be a timekeeper to try to keep things at 2 minutes. And again, that's not to limit anybody's input, but we want to get through the presentation efficiently, and we definitely have time to continue the conversation at the end and beyond this meeting, and we'll get into more detail there. So when there is more questions, it really helps us to focus on these specific prompts that we have, and that's just to get us started and to have this serve as a kickoff, and things that are geared towards how to and how does that work, or talking more in depth about fish or things about the lake. Those are things that we'll be working on into next year. So there's definitely ample opportunities to get into all of these details. And most importantly, I'm looking for everybody's email address. So if you want to be in the loop and be on the list to receive notifications, we will be doing future mailings periodically in the way that we advertise about this meeting. But if you'd like an additional email notification, please put your email into the chat bar. And if you see in the chat bar, there's an option for who to send messages to. And if you see Phil or Ellen, they're presenting, so they won't be looking at the chat bar. I'll be the one that will be watching that and saving the chat bar. So things that you type will go there. So with that, that's my housekeeping items. Thanks for your patience with that, and I'll hand it back to Phil.
Thank you, Nick. We'll go through quickly for staff and board member introductions this evening. Again, my name is Phil Belfiore. I'm the Vadnais Lake Area Water Management Organization Administrator. Dawn, why don't you go next?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Tanner, the Program Development Coordinator at Vlamo.
Nick, why don't you go?
Yep, you know me. I'm here at our office right now in after hours, so we have good internet, and I'm Education Outreach at Vlamo.
And then we have city staff, Ellen Heinecker, City Manager.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Ellen Heinecker, City Manager for the City of White Bear Lake. Glad to be here tonight.
And Connie Talon.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Connie Talon, and I'm the Environmental Specialist and Water Resources Engineer at the City of White Bear Lake.
We're very fortunate to have a couple board members, Councilmember Jones.
let's start over. Hi, everybody. Dan Jones, City of White Bear Lake Council. More importantly, this evening, I'm a board of director member for Velamo. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much, Council Member. And Council Member Bean is here as well, I believe.
Hello, everybody. Doug Bean. I'm City Council Member Ward 2, and I am looking forward to learning some new information.
Thank you for joining us. Is there anybody else on boards? I think that might be it for board members. Sorry if
no. I'm going to interrupt. We have our Mayor Emerson also joined us. You may not see her. She just was able to join us tonight.
I'm on my iPad. Joe Emerson, Mayor of White Bear Lake. I'm looking forward to learning more about this and glad to be here. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, for missing you there. I apologize.
No problem.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much. It's good to meet everybody and have everybody here in one place. Councilmember Jones, could you give a brief welcome message to everybody?
Yeah, I would be more than happy to. Welcome again to this neighborhood conversation for the East Goose Lake Adaptive Program that we're putting together. Goose Lake, little history, has been marked on some of the earliest maps of this area dating back from before Minnesota even became a state. Goose Lake existed. Goose Lake marks the southern entrance point, as we all know, entering the city of White Bear Lake via northbound 61. Also shares a boundary where the White Bear area started with the first home, first school, church, cemetery, and business. For all the history that Goose Lake has witnessed, it's not been given the care that its more well-known, bigger neighbor to the north and east has received. Over the past 100 years, the lake has been really mistreated by becoming a raw sewage deposit site, being split in half by US Highway 61, having White Bear Avenue, a 4-lane concrete road built around it, very close to the shore, surrounding 40% of that northeast shoreline. Needless to say, Goose Lake hasn't been shown a lot of love. And as a consequence, it has been listed as an impaired body of water by the DNR. This evening, to me, and hopefully for everyone, is about providing a description of the public engagement approach that was recently presented to the City Council of White Bear Lake and Velamo Board of Directors, who are working cooperatively to try to get feedback from the community. Tonight's session is focused on listening, and the first step for the City of White Bear Lake, Velamo, and our entire community to determine a direction to work together to improve the quality of Goose Lake. The simple fact that Goose Lake is polluted, yet serves as the headwaters for Lambert Creek, which flows west from West Goose Lake into Rice Lake, a large wetlands adjacent to Fox Meadow Park in White Bear Township, Lambert Lake wetlands that eventually does drain into East Vadnais Lake, which does serve as the drinking reservoir for the city of St. Paul. It's an important lake. Water doesn't know municipal boundaries, but Goose Lake does lie 100% within the city of White Bear Lake and Velamo. I believe it's our obligation and responsibility as a city, as a water management organization, as a community, and as a state to improve East Goose Lake with the short-term goal of building a sustainable management program that achieves a healthier East Goose Lake combined with a long-term goal. This is probably more me than anything else, but a long-term goal of getting delisting Goose Lake from the Minnesota's PCA's impaired waters list. That would be a great thing for me personally. I want to thank the many folks who have contacted me directly and expressing their thoughts regarding Goose Lake so far. I also want to say particular thanks to the staff for the City of White Bear Lake and the staff of Velamo. They've both done a lot of work, a lot of cooperative work to format, develop this, and gather input to determine this program tonight and the future of East Goose Lake. Appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Really appreciate the kind words, and thank you. All right, I will start going through this information, which is now on the second agenda item, the Intro to East Goose Lake Adaptive Lake Management, which has three main parts that I will talk about tonight: the benefits of adaptive lake management, or ALM, the steps to implement that approach, and the possible management projects for adaptive lake management. That last part is the most important because that is also, the management projects are what we're going to be asking you to provide input on later on in the agenda. There are 4 main reasons to focus on a healthier East Goose Lake. First is that it's a gateway resource to the city of White Bear Lake on Highway 61, as Councilmember Jones mentioned. Second, it has recreational benefits. It has boating, wildlife viewing, and something that could really have a future potential as we go through this process is a better population of fishery. Thirdly, businesses and residents really benefit from a healthier East Goose Lake. That visual appeal I talked about, but also property values. It's been proven that healthy and better quality lakes have increased property value around for the residents around that live on it. And as Councilmember Jones also mentioned, that watershed connection, serving over 400,000 people, being a headwaters to Lambert Creek that serves that for drinking water for one of the largest reservoirs for population in the state of Minnesota for drinking. And the fourth important that we also talked about is that requirement that was mentioned before. And that is that it's on the impaired waters list. The city of White Bear Lake has a responsibility to the state of Minnesota as a state water body to work towards significant improvement of the water quality of this impaired lake and to meet a total maximum daily load nutrient reduction limit. So recent actions related to this work on East Goose Lake, the board in spring identified that they're no longer pursuing a temporary boating restriction, nor are they directed that we are no longer pursuing a Bowser-Allen grant, given that the grant would lock us into a 15-year process, which could not change over time and was very rigidly set, which would ultimately result in higher overall management costs for a healthier East Goose Lake. Then in the summer and fall of 2020, the city and Velamo staff started brainstorming and discussing ideas and options related to stakeholder engagement, financial partnership, and then talked about some of those ideas and options with City Manager Heinecker and Councilmember Jones. We also spent a lot of time doing research, investigating other shallow lakes that were impaired in our neighboring watersheds. Lastly, we constructed a managed access boat launch, which could be accessed by city staff or Velamo staff to implement the actions that you're going to hear about tonight to try to make a healthier lake. There are 3 fundamental core elements to adaptive lake approach. One is that it's an approach that's based on a timeline, based on stakeholder engagement and continuous evaluation. The second element is that it needs frequent partner check-ins and also is based on scientific monitoring and surveys of both the social and the biological. Thirdly, it's a transparent process with incremental results, making sure we're communicating clearly amongst ourselves and recognizing the challenges. The goal, ultimate outcome, is to improve the water quality and develop a healthier East Goose Lake. There are 4 steps to the adaptive lake approach. The first is the most important, and that is listening and input. That is what tonight is all about. Also, there will be the second step is to take that input, work with the science, and develop management approaches and initial projects to try to achieve goals and management objectives. The third is to implement those projects. And the fourth, and very importantly, is to get feedback both from stakeholders and looking at the science of what's happening in the lake and adjusting based on that feedback and based on that scientific evaluation, and then doing it all over again, but improving yourself because you evaluated what you did. The first step, again, most important step in the 4-step process of ALM is input and listening. There are 3 main components to that. Tonight is the neighborhood conversation. It's really a kickoff meeting to the adaptive lake approach. Will also include a mailing, which will be a response input form, which will be sent in the mail tomorrow to everybody that was invited and everybody here tonight. There also will be continued input going into 2021, including a broader community conversation, likely using web resources because of COVID restrictions, and also including on that web resource a stakeholder survey for everyone to provide further engagement and an interest survey. The 2nd through 4 steps of the adaptive lake process really are based on identifying the projects that are needed to address the resource in 4 management areas: fish management, vegetative management, subwatershed best practices or projects that feed from the watershed, and internal load, which means practices that are done in the lake itself. So now the next 5 slides you're going to see, I'm going to talk about the next 5 slides, and then you're going to see the exact same 5 slides again when City Manager Heinecker starts the process of requesting your input and facilitating that discussion. So the first of the 5 slides is the proposed projects for 2021. Now, none of these 5 slides are set in stone. They are proposals, with the latter 4 slides being just an idea of possible projects to give you an idea of what it could look like. Obviously, this process will be identified by your input and by looking at the science coming forward into 2021. So the proposed projects in 2021 are really in 2 categories. One is related to fish management, which will include proposed projects of a fish removal demonstration, which would be to remove the monotype population of fish, which is bullhead, in the lake. This will be done in partnership with the DNR. And it's to really do research to see if we can sustain some type of lower population of bullheads without any further management early on in this process, or can't we? The other research or demonstration related to fish is a stocking plan, a stocking activity that will also be recommended by the DNR, which is to put game fish in the lake to see if they can survive and to see how they do in reducing the population of bullheads. The third and most important proposed project for 2021 is an adaptive lake management development plan, management plan, and stakeholder engagement process. Of course, this is also going to rely heavily on engagement and also being using the media instead of face-to-face due to COVID adaptation. So here are the next 4 slides I'm going to talk about that are really the guts of what I'm talking about and what we're going to ask you for input on tonight. We're going to go through, again, the 4 categories of management areas of possible projects that could be implemented over the next 3 to 5 years when ultimately the adaptive management plan is completed in 2021. Some of the possible projects for fish management could include bullhead removal and monitoring, really taking what we learned from 2021 work and moving forward to a more sustainable removal plan moving into 2022 and beyond. How can we do that? And also monitoring the results of that removal. Second part of possible management fish management projects could be a predator fish stocking plan that's more done on a regular basis, which could be looking at population diversity as well as game fish diversity. The third one, and very important, is trying to work with the winter oxygen levels in the lake through aeration projects. The second management area that we would potentially have projects in with part of the Adaptive Lake Program is vegetation management. Possible projects include treating invasive species, including the curly-leaf pondweed, which is one that has been treated in other areas around the city. This particular invasive species is very important because it dies off in early summer and emits a lot of nutrients back into the lake when it dies off, and it's a water quality concern species. Also putting on the table and making sure that everyone's aware that we are putting this on the table at the beginning of this process through listening that we've done is vegetative management for recreation and balancing that out with water quality and science needs. The third management area that we are going to be asking for input on as part of the adaptive process is possible projects that treat the water before that stormwater runs into the lake. They're called best management practices. Some of those practices could include underground filtration basins, putting water back into the soil so it does not run off into the lake. Rain gardens, such as the ones that were just constructed on County Road F, just south of the lake, pictures seen on the right. A cost share program that is a partnership between the City of White Bear Lake and Belamo to provide cost share funding to residents who wish to put practices on their private property. And it could be education projects such as adopted drain, stenciling right onto the curb, reminding people not to dump waste into the drain. The fourth and final management area that we're going to ask you for input on possible projects for the internal load management projects could include alum treatment, which is putting an aluminum sulfate into the water to allow the substrate or the sediment to bind the phosphorus into this sediment under the water so that it does not get re-released from carp and other forces that are then churning that phosphorus back up into the lake. There could be multiple treatments, 1, 2, or even more treatments of alum as possible projects for the internal load category. And also importantly is a monitoring program to set as benchmarks what we need and how we want to set a dosing for these possible treatments, and also to gauge the treatments as we go so that we're not overdosing or and we can alter the time related to the dosings. Studies have identified that internal load projects are the most important part because internal loading is the most largest polluter contributor to East Goose Lake. We'll have obviously lots of conversations about this both on a social standpoint and scientific standpoint because of the important category of internal load management. Now I'm going to share the screen over to City Manager Heinecker, who's going to talk about the input session. Thank you so much. Do you have it yet, Ellen, or whoops? I think you're muted, Ellen.
Yeah, I know there is finding my control there. Okay, can everybody see my slide that it's up? That says input session. Good, all right, thank you. Just a few things I'd like to go through before we ask some of the questions that have been prepared for tonight. We have about 30 minutes that are set aside for this session, and it's really to seek initial feedback. I want to reemphasize what Phil had gone through, indicating that there'll be opportunities following tonight's meeting for input through the mailing and also through an interactive website that VLAMO will be developing and putting more information up after the beginning of the year. So be sure to stay tuned for that as well. Of course, out of respect for everyone's time, we're really trying to keep this to an hour, so that's why it's important that these 30 minutes are used carefully. Before getting started, just a reminder that we hope to create an environment that provides balanced opportunities to contribute. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is after each question, I'm going to take the PowerPoint down and then just raise your hand, physically raise it so that I can see it, and then I'll call on people to provide comment and to participate in the discussion. And then, of course, there are going to be some that prefer not to speak. There's always those that would prefer to do that. They're sharing in writing. There's the chat function that Nick had talked about at the bottom of your screen. You can participate through chat. Everything that's put in chat, if we don't get an opportunity to get to it during this input session, it will be captured and, of course, answered in part of our kind of the effort to summarize all of the information that was put together for tonight. Let's see, and all the comments, of course, they may not be addressed, and for that we apologize in advance, but again, use the chat and be sure to follow up with comments through that mailing after you receive it. And then lastly, before we get started, the meeting will be recorded. All of the verbal comments, along with those written down, of course, will be captured, and input from tonight. And the follow-up mailing will be synthesized and brought into our future engagement sessions. So with that, let's get started. I'll go to the first question. And the first one is really related to what Phil had reviewed for the proposed projects for 2021. And just as a quick review, he talked about the proposal for doing some fish removal, and that would again be in partnership with the DNR along with the fish stocking demonstration. And also the continued development of this adaptive lake management process and stakeholder engagement, which is a critical piece to developing a long-term management program. And with that, we're really looking for some initial feedback on any comments of those proposed 2021 projects, more specifically, whether they're comments of support or reservations. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment and look out here to those that are participating and see if there's any questions. And again, just please indicate your interest by raising your hand if you do have one. Yes, Lindsay.
Hello, everybody. You know, we had looked at the agenda and kind of at one time you guys were going to put forward 3 questions to us. So did that plan change a little bit?
These actually the questions we're going through them right now, and then there will be summarized in the mailing that you'll receive will also repeat those 3 questions. So,
okay, so I guess I'll just start with the question you put forward. In talking to fellow Goose Lake residents, we are definitely interested in the fish management. And we've talked about it a few times, and we've talked about it with Vlamo and city council members as well. But the fish project, again, getting rid of the bullheads, because we did see so much improvement when that happened last time. So removal of the bullheads, healthy fish, the fish project we are excited about. And also just kind of seeing how things, we're interested in seeing the numbers as far as East Goose Lake has continued to improve. We know that and have shown that. But wondering, what effects it's going to have with the rain gardens at County Road F and the Polar Chev project, and kind of seeing, what's working in those type of things. The reservations we have definitely is with alum treatment. We did a ton of research last year in 2019, presenting to the city, spending a lot of time discussing things with Vlamo members, city council members, and we get the strong feeling that alum treatment is not the right fit after talking to a number of scientists and people that have done alum treatment and small lakes who have been there, done that. But we were also interested in hearing more about the aeration. I don't know if I saw that on the slide, but in the last agenda, that was mentioned. So those are our thoughts on that.
No, thank you, Lindsay. And some of the things that you have brought up, there'll be opportunities to speak to that more, and because we're going to go through each of those different management projects that Phil had referenced. So those are all, that's great input, and I appreciate that. Thank you. And just we have just another minute or two to speak specifically to the 2021 projects. Yeah, Paul.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I am absolutely supportive of the fish management solutions and the options that have been proposed. Like Lindsay said, I have some significant concerns around alum. Some of the reasons that were cited about Goose Lake being a gateway and the aesthetic appeal of the lake, in addition to potential to losing recreational use of the lake if alum is provided. Coleman Lake and Maplewood turned into giant bogs when they went through alum treatments, and they smell, they float through, and the residents were not happy with it at all. So sorry, my 6-year-old is getting her moment on camera here. But yeah, so I don't think that's the right fit. We're supportive of cleaning up the lake, but want to balance it with being able to use it recreationally, which is the reason why we moved here in the first place.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, so some common themes, and as Phil had shared, the consideration of alum would not, there was not any consideration to a 2020 project for that specifically, just to be clear on that. But so I appreciate that feedback. And maybe we'll go to the next question unless there's an additional comment, maybe on the projects for 2021. And if at any time it feels like I'm speeding through, again, I'm just trying to be respectful of time. So we'll make sure that we capture this. All right, thank you. Let me get back and let me share the screen. And we will go to the next question. And these actually, this is broken up into question 2 is 4 parts. So it's reflecting on each of the possible actions management actions that were described by Phil, and we'll take them one by one. The first one was fish management, and as you recall, he talked about the possibility of the bullhead removal, predator fish stocking, and an aeration demonstration. And we've gotten a few comments already in support of the fish removal, so I'm going to take the screen down and ask for some perhaps additional comments that people may have on that specific management action that relates to the fish removal or their aeration. And Lindsay, yes.
Okay, I was just going to address question 2, and I think I jumped the gun a little bit because I kind of addressed those things, but definitely interested in fish management. Would be willing to discuss the vegetation management a little bit more. I think I've shared with you all before that we have done, vegetation management and curly leaf removal over on West Goose Lake. So something we can certainly discuss.
Great. Okay.
Next door, not her.
Thank you. Yes. Is it Jenny?
Yep, Jenny and Scott were also very supportive of of managing the fish.
Thank you. I think there was a brief question. Since we have a moment here, I'm going to ask myself about the aeration demonstration. Phil, could you speak to that for a moment?
Sure. Thank you, City Manager. The 2021, it's not included in the 2021, but for the aeration management demonstration, the idea is to identify possible techniques that are cost effective and also effective from a biological standpoint of trying to deal with the lack of oxygen, particularly winter killing. Those game fish, as you may guess, are much more sensitive creatures and will often die. There's evidence, to my understanding, scientifically, that a lot of them have died in that lake in the past. And if we're going to have a sustainable system to try to eliminate the monopopulation of bullheads in that lake, we need to try to make sure that it doesn't winter kill every year, and that we can build a sustainable stocking plan that includes predators and a diversity of populations, and doesn't winter kill. There's two ways to do it if you want that. One is you can stock every year, assuming it may winter kill. That might be costly and might not be sustainable. The other way to do is to see if we can afford and see if we can feasibly technically do an aeration system that can then keep those alive in the winter, particularly in the coldest winters, and then therefore their population will be more self-sustainable. Does that make sense?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think that helps. I think there are a couple of questions. I don't know, Nick, anything in the chat you want me to address, or I'll just move on?
Nope, not on this question. Go ahead.
All right, let me go on to the next section then. And the next one will be just focusing more specifically on the area of vegetation management and some of the potential projects, again, that Phil had briefly reviewed were the treating of invasive species, that more specifically the curly-leaf pondweed, and then secondly, the potential for vegetation management for recreation. So with that, again, I'm going to take the screen down and see if there's any comments, any reservations or comments of support. Yeah, Lindsay.
I guess I would reiterate, I guess I was jumping the gun again, that yes, we would be supportive of hearing more about the vegetation management, and just kind of circling back, thanks Phil for sharing that information about the aeration, definitely learning more about that and ways to avoid that winter kill. Sounds great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Just thumbs up. There we go.
Seconded, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anybody else? These are great, and this is exactly what we're looking for. Just some initial, feedback, because there'll be a lot of opportunity for more and more discussion as we move forward. But as this rolls out, this is great feedback. Thank you. Okay, all right. I will go ahead and I will share the next question, really, and that's about the subwatershed best management practices and as a management action. And some of those possibilities would include perhaps underground filtration basins. And a lot of this, of course, is dependent on different grant funding that may or may not be available. There's also a lot of work being done with rain gardens and bioswales, and then adopted drain programs that we have in the area. So any comments on those best management practices? Any comments of support or reservations you have just initially on, or feedback on that? Yes, Paul.
Yeah, so we're a participant in the Adopted Drain program. I think it's great, and I would love to learn more about, rain gardens, what we can do from, shoreline practices, things like that to prevent runoff. Actually, when we moved in, I met with Tyler, who I'm not sure if he's on the call or not, about potential shoreline improvements, and we've taken a few steps in that and trying to keep it natural. But we'd love to hear more, and if there's opportunities that we can make it better and limit what's going into the lake, I'd love to do that.
Wonderful, and thanks so much for being a part of the Adopted Drain program. That's really, really great. Thank you. Lindsay, it looks like you wanted to, yes.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say the same, piggyback on that adopted drain, when it was promoted by Vlamo, we took part as well. We're doing 3 drains here on Rushworth Lane, the cul-de-sac just off East Goose Lake. As far as the rain gardens, yes, very, very interested. But one of the concerns we've had is Vlamo keeps telling us there's grant money for these rain gardens for shoreline. We've applied and been rejected every time. So with all due respect, I've been telling people, geez, that offer just seems like fluff because it never happens. And even there's been incidents where Stephanie was with us along East Goose Lake and West Goose Lake, side note, property we have over there. And she said, yes, this is a great idea. This is what we want. The rain garden's the natural, and it got rejected. So unfortunately, the grant money seems like fluff so far, but we are definitely interested in making it happen someday.
Okay. Good. Well, it's nice to know that you're interested, Lindsay, and I'm sure that there'll be some, looking into some and what may have happened. But great that you are excited about doing that. I think there's so many things that we can do, right, to preserve the quality, or to not make it so the quality is any worse as we improve it, to preserve what we improve. So thank you. Anybody else? Or I'll go on to the next one. All right, let me share the next one, and so now we're at the last actual management action plan, I guess, that was described by Phil, and this is very specific to the internal load management. And already I know that we've had some comments of concern related to alum treatment. So very duly noted. We know that has been something that has been a concern that's been raised by a few of you in the past. It is still something that's being considered and looked into, so you'll continue to see this pop up as a point of conversation. And the alum treatments, as Phil described, may or may not include 1 or 2, and along with that, of course, includes the lake monitoring that would be critical to any alum treatments that may or may not happen. So with that said, I know that again we've had an opportunity to hear from a few of you on that. Recognizing there's concerns, and we can talk more about that before I go back to either of you two. I don't know if anybody else wanted to voice either a concern or had perhaps was supportive of that approach. If not, yeah, go ahead, Lindsay. Oh, and it's you too. And then okay. I think you had a question or something to say as well. So go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, I mean, just since we're on the topic, I'll just reiterate that majority of Goose Lake residents that kind of talked a lot about this last year and pulled research and talked to different scientists and groups that do alum treatment and reached out to other shallow lakes who, like I said, had been there, done that. We really feel that alum treatment is not the right fit. That we don't want to put more chemical in, and the fact that it just, like Paul was saying, we did a ton of research with the folks at Coleman Lake just in Maplewood, and what a nightmare that was, that it did become such a swampland, very expensive to remove all those weeds once that happens, the aesthetic appeal and the smell and all of those issues. So just after digging in, and I'm happy to share any of our research or our PowerPoints that got poured over last year, and our resources, that we just still feel that alum is not the right fit.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. And I want to make sure, Jenny, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Those of us that do boat on the lake, are a little scarred from the potential of the boating rights being taken away. So regardless, all the treatments, all the solutions, I think you can hear all of us state we're very supportive of a lot of the ideas, partnering, not only strategically, but potentially even in other ways. It's the boating rights that really, really, really hit home for those of us that have families on the lake and live here for it. So that's regardless of the treatment. I just want to emphasize that part.
Great. I appreciate that comment, Jenny. And I just want to add, I guess on behalf of Vlamo, one thing that I think this whole approach right now with this adaptive lake management approach that they are going through right now, really sort of it's a reset, really. It's a reset to say, right, here we all share this wonderful resource. And how do we work through the management of that lake together and have these conversations? And so I hope that you all feel good about, starting at this point. And I appreciate your observation, both Jenny and Lindsay, because I know those were some tough conversations we had last year. So great reset, and we'll move through all of that. So thank you.
And Ellen, fielding something from the chat bar, it relates to this. There was something about the temporary or permanent quality of recommended boating restrictions, and if anyone can speak to that.
Yeah, maybe, I guess, Phil, I'm going to turn to you, and if you want to speak to, because I think it's fair to ask, and there's questions popping up about, okay, we had gone, I think as a community with the city and Vlamo to say we'd like to consider the boating restrictions, and then we retreated from that for a variety of reasons. And Phil, if you could speak to that and maybe where that sits today.
To be clear, the boating restriction is not being pursued as part of the Adaptive Lake Management Program. So that is not something that is currently under the conversation. Now, if it comes up as part of something that's an emphasis or something as everything, this is an input process and it's focused on engagement. So whatever we will be reporting, the outcomes of this engagement. Right now, it's not something that we've discussed at a staff level. It's not, as you can see in the list of things that we've talked about in the management projects. But again, we're not talking about that in the adaptive lake process, and I wouldn't anticipate that it will become an issue moving forward.
Thank you. Any more questions specific to that perhaps we can help with, or just in general, or comments?
Ellen?
Yes.
Dan Jones here. Just to clarify, that restriction was temporary, and it became a requirement from Bowser as part to receive the grant money. One of the reasons why we chose one of the many reasons not to choose to take that grant money. I mean, we were held with the feet to the fire saying, you need to have that restriction. You said you'd have. I believe the original was, we will pursue something like that. I'm paraphrasing, and it became ironclad. But there was just other ways to work around it if an alum treatment would be possible, would be feasible. I do have a question regarding on the success of the TMDL, total managed daily loads of phosphorus. I'll aim it at Phil, just for the percentage, out of the things that we've talked about tonight. I mean, how much will, having fish stocked help clean the lake to move the needle? How much will rain gardens, will storm drains move the needle to clean up the lake? How much will alum possibly, even as a temporary, move the needle? I mean, that's kind of a question that I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones, for that question. And you recall back to the slide that we went through, identified that studies have identified that internal loading is the biggest piece of the pie to the impairment problem for East Goose Lake. And without dealing with the internal loading, which I believe is around 80% of the pollutants that are contributing to the impairment, then it's going to be challenging to really change the appearance and change the measurably or tangibly show a large or significant difference in the lake's appearance or the water quality monitoring results without dealing with internal loading. And that was going, again, back when we referenced that in that slide. We know the science very well in this lake. It's been studied for many years. It's a very challenging lake. It's highly impaired, more than even some of the other lakes that are in the area. And if we don't aggressively address internal loading, we will make some improvements to both the appearance and to the water quality, but they likely will not be significant, and they likely will not tangibly change the appearance of the lake, as far as vegetation, as far as the overall, a large-scale, healthier looking lake. I don't know if that answers your question enough, Dan, but it's a very important piece of the pie that we have to decide in this process where that balancing act is to try to achieve that.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay. See, just before we proceed under that, I just want to make sure, because the last question I had was just, it's sort of a free-for-all, and we have about, and then I'm sorry, I want to get, because you had a question, and I forget your first name. I know it's Carpenter. So sorry. I'll be right. I just want to for housekeeping purposes, make sure that we're done with that one slide, and I'm going to move on just to a broad question, and I won't show the slide. It's just, kind of a catch-all. Any other comments or questions, and we'll catch that in there. And we have about, we have a good 6 minutes that we can kind of open that up. So yes, please go ahead. You had a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna be a little positive here compared to that last comment there, Phil. But I've been living on this lake since 2000. I've seen the incredible improvement in this lake, and it has been incredible. I mean, it was pitch black. The water burned your eyes. It was crazy we were even in it. This year was the cleanest this lake's ever been from a clarity standpoint. Just algae blooms, everything. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So the lake is heading in the right directions. There's been some great things that we're seeing in polar shove and the rain gardens. We want to see the effect of those and where it's going, the fish man. So we are seeing a lot of positive effects. Is it where we want it to get yet? No, but I think we gotta take stock of the fact that this lake has been getting better, and a lot better, especially the people living in it every single day. We're seeing it. So I think we can get there.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your comments. Appreciate that. So the question 3, as I just had articulated, was just a catch-all based on all that we've talked about. And the other ones were very specific to some specific topics. And if you have anything further that maybe you want to comment on this process, what more specifically, really what's going to be coming up this next year will be more of this. And yes, Paul.
Yeah, I just like to say thank you for at least hosting this open dialogue. I feel like this is much more of a collaborative effort than we went through in the past, and I'm looking forward to being able to continue and engage in it. I think I don't want to speak for anyone on the lake, but for all of us, or from my household at least, when the comments went out and the survey went out last year, some of the proposed solutions and treatment options weren't even part of that survey, and weren't certainly reflective of the residents' feedback. So I appreciate that we're having this dialogue, and I hope that our feedback is considered, and that our voices are heard as part of this process.
Oh, absolutely. And we appreciate also being given the opportunity to have, again, like we call it, sort of a restart with this entire conversation on an asset that we all share and care about deeply. So thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. My name is Paige Stevens, and I'm new to this conversation, but I'm really grateful as residents of the lake as well for all the work that's being done. I have many questions, and I'm just not even sure how to type in them to a chat bar, so I'm sort of technologically challenged. But one question I have is, and you can answer it in a minute, is I'm unfamiliar with the internal loading terminology, so I'd like a little clarification about that. And then the second question is, in the most basic way, if this is the headwater of the Lambert Creek and it goes through West Lake or West Goose Lake and then through Water Gremlin property, truly what good does it do to rectify or to try to improve this lake if it then goes through West Goose Lake, which is not being improved, and then through the Water Gremlin issues to get to the wetlands?
Thank you. No, those are, both of them are very important questions, and I am going to turn to Phil. If you could, we have about 5 minutes, Phil, if you want to go ahead and give a shot at those and then wrap up perhaps some
Sure.
of your
And I also want to, I know that we have limited time, so just to let you know that these questions are recorded and will be synthesized and will be put into a frequently asked questions page moving forward on our web link, so that you have some of these answers more accessible to you other than tonight, just to paraphrase that. 2 questions on internal loading. And Councilmember Jones did a nice job explaining. So when all the runoff and all the history of the lake, there's a bunch of nutrients that are stuck in the under soil underneath the surface of the water. And when things happen like bullheads or wave action or other things, it brings that nutrients in the soil back up into the water and then re-pollutes it again and again and again. And so if you don't do something about that, even if you have a super clean watershed and everything has a rain garden flowing into it and it's all super clean water flowing into the lake, if you don't deal with the nutrients coming up from the bottom, if you will, up being constantly resuspended from the soil, then you haven't protected your investment of the runoff protection going into the lake. And so that's what internal loading means, is that they're just constantly internally loading itself because the phosphorus and the nutrients are polluting the lake continually from the sediment underneath the lake. The second question, I think, was something about downstream situations. So this is the headwaters lake, which means that everything that happens in East Goose Lake affects all those lakes going downstream. So if it's polluted and it discharges or goes downstream, it's pushing more nutrients to those lakes downstream and those wetlands downstream. So that because of, and if you clean up East Goose Lake or make it less polluted, it's going to have less nutrients going into West Goose Lake, less nutrients than therefore will be going into Lambert Creek, and then ultimately downstream into the wetlands and ultimately into Badness Lake. So it builds on each other, but this is the headwaters. So this is one of the more important ones to make sure we do a good job on. They're all important. They all have different challenges, but this one is called the headwaters of that lake.
Thank you. And then I want to ask again, I don't know that we are on your mailing list, or, I mean, we got the mail, the snail mail, but I'm not familiar with the surveys that you sent out or anything else. So I want to better understand how to get on your list.
There, Manager Heinecker, so we will have a hard copy snail mail packet that will be mailed out tomorrow that you should get in the snail mail, that you can ask additional questions and provide additional feedback to the exact same questions talked about tonight. There will also be, if you provided your email address, or if you will provide your email address either now or on that hard copy sheet, we will make sure that you're on our official mailing list, and we'll give you email blasts and also alert you when the web resource is up and running.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your questions. Those were, it's great. Some of those, a lot of this is very science-based, and for me, I continue to learn every time I talk to people from Vlamo and other watershed management organizations or districts, so thanks. I think we've run out of time, so what I'd like to do is ask, I'm going to see what time it is. We said that we'd try to get, I know, Dick, you have a few wrap-up things. I know, Lindsay, you had one more comment. I'm just going to let you sneak it in. If I could, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Ellen. I appreciate it. I was just some final comments. Again, this kind of goes to the questions that you guys had talked about at the Vlamo board meeting as far as what we appreciate about East Goose Lake, and really it's recreational use and with the family and quality family time. And we have a deep love for East Goose Lake. And then one of the questions that day was, well, what are the issues or concerns you have about East Goose Lake? And the issue and concern has really been just with Vlamo. And I'm so glad that we're calling this a reset, because really after what happened last year, it is about rebuilding trust. Because last year a survey did go out and everybody came back, we don't want to remove the boats. And Vlamo went full speed ahead asking the city to do that. So it's what we really are hoping, that we can rebuild that trust and rebuild the relationship again. and that we will have more things like this, and we will be considering it a true reset where the stakeholders' voices will be heard. So that's important to us.
Good. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Good, thank you. And everybody for your input. This was, I think, really, really productive. And we look forward to a lot more conversation as we move ahead in this process. And I think I've completed my task of facilitating that part of the discussion. And I'm going to pull up the screen and let Phil wrap it up so everyone can go on with their evenings.
Yes. Thank you, City Manager Heinecker. I think she's just going to share a few final slides and I'll talk. So next steps. Really most important on this slide is the first bullet, which is that hard copy response form. So that's going to be in US mail. It's going to be sent out tomorrow. And that will allow you, if you did not have an opportunity to provide all your input that you'd like tonight, or if you'd like to add additional comments from what you verbally commented, we'll be sending that to everybody that's on this call and everybody that was invited. And we're requesting those response forwards be sent back by January 8th. You could send those back in a self-addressed stamped envelope that will be in the US mail packet, or you could email those back to myself or Nick, who's going to be on the actual envelope and flyer. You could email that back to him, then we'll have your email address as well. Then in 2021, we will be moving forward with that web resource. Again, this is a kickoff meeting to the engagement phase of this process. And really wanted to thank everybody for your comments and for attending tonight. And that web resource in early 2021 will be up. We don't have an exact date yet, but sometime in early 2021, that will be kind of a one-stop shop for things like summaries, updates, and the survey will be there as well. And so if you have your email address, if we have your email address, we'll let you make sure we know when that, we'll let you know when that web hub is live. And then as we move forward into 2021, this will be an adaptive process with additional rollouts and additional opportunities for input. And that is the next steps. And we do have my contact information on the next slide. I'll encourage you to put your questions also on that hard copy input response form. The best way for us to synthesize and the best way for us to build a frequently asked questions resource on the web resource is for you to write down what your questions are and also to, again, provide additional input or your input on those questions that Ellen talked to you about tonight. So here's my contact information. And that's all I had, but I wanted to thank you very much. Again, this is a process that is going to be that engagement is going to be the foundational part of this, and that we are going to use your input and balance that with the science and try to find common ground and balanced solutions so that we can sustainably manage this resource and make Goose Lake a healthier lake. That's the objectives here for this, and we really wanted to thank you for all your energy and all your great questions tonight.
Thank you, Phil. Nice to meet you via screen.
And hopefully sometime we can all meet in person soon.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that very much.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.